In our last episode, we got lost in the amazing town of San Miguel de Allende. This time around, we leave mainland Mexico behind and spend a few days crossing the Sea of Cortez, headed for the Baja. From our starting point in the Puerto Vallarta area, it's a roughly 3-day passage across the sea to our final destination of La Paz. But we were hoping to stretch this trip out a little longer and make a little stop along the way. Well, we're off. We left La Cruz a couple of hours ago and are heading, well, basically north and across the Sea of Cortez from the mainland to the Baja side. At the moment, got pretty good sailing. It's about 15 knots on the beam. We're doing about 6.5, 7 knots, something like that, which is pretty good for this old boat. But it's a little lumpy. We've got 2 different swells going on, so we're bouncing around a bit. Not terrible, but definitely not comfortable. From where we are right here, we're actually heading first to a little island called Isla Isabel. It'll take us overnight to get there. We're shooting for getting there sometime mid-morning, but this forecast we got right now, we're hoping that it works out because it's not a protected anchorage there at all. We sort of need flat calm, settled weather to stop there, and we'd like to stop there. So we're crossing our fingers that this dies out sometime in the middle of the night and we end up having to motor the rest of the way. With an overnight sail coming our way and the boat chugging along nicely, there's really not a whole lot to do other than just get the boat locked in and settle in for some hours at sea. But just when things seem to be getting awful sleepy on this boat, that's when it happened. Pure magic. I don't care how many times we've been surrounded by a huge pod of dolphins, I can tell you with 100% certainty, it never gets old. At the moment, there's nothing around. We're in the middle of nowhere, miles from anything. 2 boats going opposite directions on a collision course. Kind of weird. Been watching this guy on AIS for, I don't know, the last 12, 14 miles, something like that. 2 boats going the opposite direction on a collision course. So we've veered about 10 degrees to port. He's on a starboard tack. He's got the right of way. See ya. Well, unfortunately, the wind died. and it died a lot sooner than we thought it would. We were supposed to be able to sail for pretty much, well, a good portion of the night, but no wind. It's not nighttime yet. So we've been motoring for a bit, and that's sort of a problem because we're going too fast. We were actually sailing too fast to begin with, but now we're going too fast motoring, and so we're gonna actually arrive at Isla Isabel, I don't know, like 2 in the morning. That's sort of a problem. So odds are we'll probably have to just heave to, hang out, bob around, wait for sunrise, and then find ourselves a spot to anchor. That's the way it goes. Well, it's about 2:30 in the morning. We're about 5 miles south of Isla Isabela, and we're hove to. I don't want to go into the whole hove to process at the moment because I'm too tired. It's 2:30 in the morning. But if there's enough interest, maybe we'll talk about it in another episode. But I will say it's amazingly difficult to slow a boat down. We have to go a certain speed to keep this boat comfortable going through swell. And so here we are, really early, and we don't want to anchor at Isla Isabela in the dark. So we're going to bob around until the sun comes up, then we'll finish sailing our way there. But I will also say that, well, there's about a 4 to 6 foot swell and only about 8 to 10 knots of breeze out there. It's kind of like we're just in a mildly rolly anchorage. It's pretty comfortable. So we're gonna get some sleep. Well, actually one of us, Brenda's turn now. I've got a couple more hours on watch, and then I'll get some sleep. Nighty night. See you in the morning. We made it to Isla Isabel, and we're trying to find a place to anchor. The south side of this island has a decent anchorage, but there's a bit of swell going in right now. It's kind of blown out. So we're on the east side trying to find a spot here. This is a really rocky anchorage. So we've got a float, some line. This is going on the front of the anchor just in case it gets hooked on some rocks. But we're really trying to find a sandy spot. Not having much luck at the moment because there's already a couple of boats in the spot where we know it's sandy. So we're gonna drop the hook, hope for the best, put a float on it just in case it gets hooked on some rocks. And Brenda's actually down there getting suited up to jump in and check on the anchor once it's down. But with the slow drop of the anchor and a funny sound coming from the windlass, it was sounding like we were gonna have a problem. Cold?
Yeah.
Well, that was not a success. Our anchor was just sitting on a rocky shelf with this dusting of sand over it. Not a good spot for us to hang out. So, but the other problem, our windlass jammed. And I don't know what the deal is with it. It would pick up just a couple of inches at a time. The breaker would flip. And, well, we got the anchor up. But this isn't a place to be hanging out if our windlass isn't working. If for some reason the weather turns and we got to get out of here fast, we need the windlass to work. So we got the anchor up, and now we're gonna get out of here and hopefully come here next time around. That's the way it goes. We're out. Unfortunately, almost as quickly as we got to Isla Isabel, it was in our rear view mirror. Well, gotta tell you, this passage has been slightly frustrating. Not only did our windlass die, if you watched a couple, maybe a few episodes ago, we had a big old frigate bird land on top of the mast and break our wind vane off. Fixed it with some toothpicks and some Gorilla Glue. That toothpick wind vane, it's now gone to the ocean. Another big old bird landed on it. It's out of here. So, our wind vane function on the autopilot, that doesn't work anymore. The autopilot still works, still steer us in a straight line, but it won't adjust its course to the wind shifts, which means we've got to do that. We've actually got to push buttons. I know, it's tough. Bigger than that really is that, well, Brenda's been a little seasick, not feeling great. She's been pretty much down for the count since we left. She comes up and does her watches to give me a break so I can get some rest, but she's not feeling great. So much so that we haven't even done any fishing. The thought of dragging a fish onto this boat, that's not going over well. But I guess on the upside, the sea state is really smoothed out compared to yesterday. This is like heavenly. It's pretty nice. With that smoothed out sea state and a much more comfortable of a ride, guess who came out from her hidey hole to try to catch some fish?
Those little, those like a very small fish. You could have been dragging them. Please just don't be a bird.
Bonito!
Haven't seen one of those before.
But that bonito wasn't super exciting. So, back to the sea it went. Well, another day. Covered about 136 miles yesterday. Not too bad. About 5.5 knot average. But actually yesterday was a pretty smooth day of sailing. Seas were flat and calm, which is a rare thing. And really had a pretty good night too. But last few hours or so, starting to get a bit of chop. And this wind and chop is coming from a bit forward of the beam, so it's kind of a bouncy, uncomfortable ride again. Where we are right here is about as far from land as we'll get on this trip. About 75 miles in any direction. Not a speck of land. It's just us out here. Blah, 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 blah. That uncomfortable, bouncy ride, it would end up lasting us through the night. But just like most bits of misery, they don't seem to last forever. The next morning, just as the sun was coming up, the good old Baja came into view. And I have to tell you, it was a gorgeous, welcome sight. And thanks to that bouncy and nearly sleepless night, we decided to anchor just outside the town of La Ventana to catch up on some sleep. Because the next morning, we'd make one final push to our final destination of La Paz. Well, we made it to La Paz. It's pretty exciting for a bunch of reasons. We're back in the Sea of Cortez, which is awesome, along the Baja, which I think is one of the best cruising grounds on the face of the earth, and we haven't even been around the world, but it's great. But even better than that, we've got a couple of old friends who are here in La Paz. So almost 20 years ago, Brenda and I moved our boat down to Seattle in a marina called Shilshole. It's a pretty famous marina in Seattle. And the first person we met there, a guy named Lonnie, he came over that evening with a plate of cookies. Pretty awesome. I like cookies. And that started a pretty long friendship. He just got here a little bit ago, so we're gonna catch up with an old friend, and he's here on his boat. Pretty cool. Also, my oldest sailing friend on the face of the earth. He was the first person I met almost 25 years ago when I got my first boat. He was my neighbor down the dock, and don't tell him this, but he's really how I learned how to sail. Just about everything I learned at the very beginning was from him. I had the book Sailing for Dummies. I'd flip through the pages trying to figure out what to do, but more I learned by following him on his boat and trying to match up what he was doing with his sails. It paid off. I got down here on a sailboat, so kind of excited to see him. He's down here. You'll meet him too. So, here's to La Paz. We made it back to the Baja. Bottoms up. Look who's here! It's Lonnie! He's one of our old friends!
You made it back. Full circle, dude.
Come on, give me a hug.
Bring it in, you betcha.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you.